Well, it's the day after Christmas here in the United States, and it's the day after. Oh no, actually, it has nothing. Christmas has nothing to do in Greece until January 6th or 7th, something like that, what they call Orthodox Christmas, or the Russian
That's
Orthodox or the Greek
that's
Orthodox do
that.
not celebrate December 25th. Is that right, Aristo?
Not that I know of. That's the probably what they call the old calendar. The is it Gregorian or the Julian calendar? The old Roman calendar. The dates are different, and some Orthodox countries like Serbia, I don't know if they changed now, used to go by the old calendar.
Oh,
But
so Greek isn't the same as Russian Orthodox?
it's the same. But I don't think that Russia goes by the old calendar either. You know, they're
Oh,
very big.
Russian Christmas. I was married to a lady that was Russian Orthodox, and they
Back,
celebrated Christmas, if I remember right, on January the 6th.
yes, but that was probably back in the communist days when Christmas was illegal in the USSR. So if you were married to a Russian woman who was traditional, she probably went by the old calendar, you know, which was they probably renewed it after they kind of liberated the system.
Oh, okay. Well, in any case, that's not what we're going to talk about now. So Aristo is going to share some things that he and I were talking about prior to actually starting the record. So, Aristo, please take it away.
Thank you, Ron. It's 8:15 on Ron's zone, and it's 3:15 where I am, or 3:16. And just for the record, and that amounts to a number 10. So you don't need triple numbers, but if you add up the numbers and they come up with something, then it kind of gives a spirit to the initiation of the conversation. So I haven't calculated this, and I'm only saying it. So let's look at the power of synchronicity. 9 or 10. We have a transition between 9 and 10. 8:15 is, you add the numbers. No, yeah, whatever. Three on my end is a transition from 9 to 10, and I'm doing the talking. If you add the numbers. Now, what that means is Ron has always said 9 is a number of completion. In reality, 10 is the number of completion. 9 is the number of consolidation. 9 is the number of putting everything together in a structure that can become complete, whose completion has not been finalized because you haven't stepped out of it. Something is only complete when you're able to encompass it fully, not just when you're in it and part of it and it becomes complete. 9 is the last stage before completion. 10 is the stage when completion has been consolidated and finalized. Now, what does this mean? Well, we're looking at regular clocks, we're looking at linear time, so we're looking at the perception of the system itself. Now, this is not what Ron and I talked about, but it relates to it. It's a kind of intuitive, I didn't know I was going to say this, for example, but I want to flow with it. The point is that when you look at reality, when you discern, you are often going to go down pathways of thinking that are feeling based. And that means your thinking is going to contradict common reason. Not common sense, but the reasoning that you've been taught is, logical. Why? Because it can jump over program hoops, because it's a hands-on reasoning, it's a hands-on mental dynamic that is serving your felt sense. So if you can put your felt sense into words, you can become much more resourceful because you can start thinking differently. That is the key to thinking differently. That is also the key to discernment. If you're able to feel, like many of us do, and you are able to deepen that sense, to are able to open up and expand that sense, the next step is to be able to translate those feelings into mental dynamics. Why? Because when you do, you reclaim space, mind space, from the matrix, which has conditioned your thought process. And you say, well, I'm already thinking logically. But you don't know that. If you're programmed, do you know you're programmed? They said, if you're insane, one of the symptoms of insanity is that you don't know you're insane. Once you start knowing you're insane, you're on the road to sanity. Once you start knowing you're an addict, you're on the road to recovery. You know, all of these things. So in the same way, and many people do this spontaneously. Ron does this. You know, he talks about associative thinking. You know, different words that sound alike, and all kinds of things. But the essence is, so numerological symbolism is not just because, oh, this is objective, oh, no, it's not objective. No, this is based on we're reaching out into symbolic opportunities through our feelings to use those symbols as expressions of what the feelings are. They are not objective truths in the sense that we are taught objectivism or what objective truth is. This is just a method. It's a suggestion. And I believe it's an important suggestion because what matters to me in all of this and why I talk once a week is opportunities for resourcefulness, to be able to move through the situation that challenges us. Whatever else we might do, whatever else our viewpoint is, whether we're, you know, giving up or in despair or, you know, optimistic or escapist or whatever, you know, we are always in a better place if we prioritize our resourcefulness. And the system is not going to do this for us. Our programming, one of the ways you know that you're engaging in programming is when you don't believe you're resourceful. When you don't see any resourcefulness anywhere. Well, that's what the program does to you. You know, how do you, and so really get to know from the inside, because you're not in completion unless you understand what's keeping you fragmented and engage with it. Now, the whole point of this, you know, we were talking about promissory notes too. Again, there was much hoopla in New Age circles. This one guy was writing an article about removing our consent from the matrix. Do not consent to this, do not consent to that. In principle, I have seen many things that in principle I agree with. However, their application is, in my opinion, not effective because it's not real application. It's still theory. It's basically projecting theory and using it as application. That's why all of this internalization stuff, the way most people describe it, doesn't work. That's why we don't create our own reality, because we're not really practicing. You know, we're projecting our theoretical mental assumptions, although we are practicing to elevate our moods, and some people have visions, and there is all of that. But we do not practice to engage with the challenge. You know, we always find ways around that. And again, the program has contingencies to keep us that way. You go on the internet and you get this message, channeled message, or this thing, or something that says there's hope, somebody's doing something, here's the other thing. They always give you an opportunity to give up. And you don't even realize that they're constantly bombarding you with opportunities to give up on the one hand and threats on the other. I mean, when somebody wants to extort, you know, and intimidate you, what do? They don't just threaten you, because you're going to get pissed off and fight back. They also give you escape clauses. They tell you, look, man, we're going to pay you a lot of money, but if you don't accept the money, you're going to die. They do that to politicians. You know, they do that to people. We will reward you if you capitulate, and we will screw you if you don't. You know, but they do it in subtle ways because they're screwing us already. What they're saying is, we're going to screw you less if you capitulate, or we'll turn off the lights so you don't see us screwing you. You know, anything to avoid the stark reality of being screwed. But at the same time, I have always said that if they're really, really all powerful in screwing us, why are they having to play these games in the first place? Why don't they just get done with it? Because the logic of it, even the common sense of it, would tell you that they need us. They constantly keep trying to convince us that they don't need us. We're talking about this, they're going to kill us all, they're going to do whatever. I tell you that this Georgia Stones and all of that crap is just bullshit. They put them up there to scare people. They're scarecrows. We have a lot of scarecrows in the world, a lot of lies, a lot of threats. And of course, occasionally somebody has to spray the scarecrow with poison to kill the crows. The crows land on the scarecrow, the poison takes effect, they die. But they can't afford to poison their crops, you know, to just kill the crows, so to speak, in this analogy. My point is that they're going to make an example of you if you are obvious, if you are so aligned with the program that your resistance conforms to a program contingency. So what you have to do if you want to avoid being arrested, avoid being beaten, avoid being killed, avoid being poisoned, you know. Even if they do poison us, not everybody dies. Even if they do throw a virus, not everybody dies. Even the medical establishment says the virus, no virus seems to have a 100% kill rate. Some of them have 98%. But what about, oh, that's just random genetics. Well, how about epigenetics? Do we all have latent genes that can make us immune to diseases if we learn to turn them on? Is there such a thing? Oh, science hasn't agreed with it. Well, I don't care. I'm going to explore the option. And in exploring the option, I noticed, for example, they're throwing viruses and this and that and the other. If I engage in what my feelings tell me to do, can I improve my health? I have. Even though I see everybody around me, people are dying, people are going to the hospital, people are complaining about their minds not working, So what makes me different? I trust my feelings, and I don't just trust my feelings, I learn to translate them into thoughts, because the mind is the designer of our behavior. It doesn't, it's not our behavior per se. Our behavior is action, and it's not the motive of our behavior, but it translates the motive into a structure that turns into action, physical and otherwise. So know thyself. As an occultist, for example, as somebody who's into esoteric stuff, their big thing is know thyself. I mean, that's the biggest ignorance. It's not the ignorance of the system. It's not the ignorance of, the world, the cosmos, the laws of nature. It's ignorance of self. Who are you? What are your resources? So, the debate between are we a slave or not a slave, let's throw that out. Are we potentially, is it in our nature to be free, or is it not in our nature to be free? Is it in our nature to exercise free will, or is it not in our nature to exercise free will? You see, I talked about, Ron, with the analogy of a car. A car, when it has gas in the tank, it has the potential to run. That doesn't mean, oh, it's not running, it will never run, it's fucked up. No, it's a regular car, it works, it's got gas in the tank, all you have to do is get in it and make it run. Even if everybody's screaming at you that they're going to kill you if you turn the key on the ignition. The thing is, the car can run. It's not running, that's the reality, but it can run. That's an important thing. I don't think we should disregard potential just because it's not actualized. Potential, the earth has the potential to grow crops, to grow food. But everybody looks at a field of dirt and says, how am I going to eat that? No, you can't. You have a bag of seeds and a field of dirt, and you've got to go through a process to turn potential manifestation into actualized manifestation. This is what we are learning. That is how you create your own reality. We have been sabotaged by something artificial. And why is it artificial? Because it contradicts our natural potential. So this thinking helps liberate you from the matrix. And what's that going to do? Well, it's going to start allowing you to engage in the details of your life differently. And people wonder, well, I'm not convincing people, I'm not influencing people. Look, we're always looking for these validations from authority, and even from our own senses, and even from, our common sense, our logic, which is programmed. We're not sensitive enough to notice the subtle validations that are constantly being bombarded on us. That the matrix is constantly trying to undermine and stomp out at every moment. Why is it doing that? I perceive it. I perceive it in real time. Whenever you come up with a good idea, I come up with an idea, I come up with a perception, I can perceive something entering my thinking process. I don't know where it comes from, but I can feel it as a tension in my body and a kind of slight headache coming in, like a jab in the head, and it's consistent. And then I forget what I was thinking. And it's like, what is this? It's consistent under the same influences, the same effect keeps popping up. So it's not random. Of course, my program logic will say, well, it's because you're fucked up. or you're just forgetful, or the chemtrails have, no, this has happened since I was a little kid. I've observed it since then, but the more I get into internal process, the more sophisticated my observation becomes and my validation. So I have gained a tremendous resource in understanding that this is going on, because now I have something to face. It's not some, oh no, what am I going to do? At least one more increment by increment. That's how you gain resourcefulness, and that's how, with the little things, you can face the big things. If people who listen actually think about this and look at their lives, because you don't have to be some big savior, sage, or whatever. This is natural human resourcefulness. All that meditation, yoga, and all of that does is amplify natural human resourcefulness, because it takes out the middleman, it takes out the program, and it focuses you on your true self. It's not mindlessness, but I'll get into that. I'll get into that in a little bit. And now, I had this big train of thought as an example, and I forgot it. I forgot what I was going to say. A little bit of sidetracking, and all of a sudden I get this big keep out. I don't know if anybody has happened to you. You have this, oh wow, this is a great, if I can only communicate this, and poof, keep out, that's it. And if you really look at the feeling of your forgetfulness, because it's not just simply, oh, it's gone. No, there's been a block. You can perceive the block, and you can perceive that the block is a directive to say access denied. There's an internal change that occurs somehow. Something is causing it that says access denied. But I do know that with persistence, there are ways around it. That's why when I talk with Ron sometimes, we say, well, we talked about this, and then it seems I start off on a whole different topic. Well, that's because I can perceive that the old topic has a bunch of access denied zones that are ready to be put in place. And I'm going to run into a dead end, so I chart a different path. I surprise the matrix. I surprise the program. And what are we going to be doing? Playing games like this? No. The fact is that this increases resourcefulness wherever you are in your life. And when you do this, you're not going to get arrested, because eventually your resourcefulness can reach a point where you can explore your own consent. This is what Ron was talking about with promissory notes. What is the commodity? Our commodity and their commodity are two different commodities. So if we're going to have a financial system after the matrix, it's going to be based on completely different principles. We can borrow the same symbolic process, have papers and whatever, and distribute symbols, monetary, symbols and stuff like that, money. But the whole underpinning of it is going to be completely different, because what's going on now with the promissory notes is very simple. You simply go there, they make you sign a piece of paper, and the piece of paper says, I am your slave. I'm basically obedient to the system, and I give over myself as collateral or whatever. Basically, giving over yourself as collateral just means you're saying they're the masters, and they have the belief system that they have the money is just another way of saying they're the masters. They're the wealthy ones. Somehow they made the money. We don't care, but they're on top of us. They control us. They control, it's their thing, and we're borrowing from them. All of this is just another way of saying that they are the system. They are, and so amongst themselves, what they trade is the assurance that they can control us. That's the monetary value. Their power to control us is what they recognize as value between them. Whoever has the more power of control, they're wealthiest. Whoever has, and they can exchange it for other things. That's what they exchange. They say, okay, because all of them, that's all they want is control. They're control freaks. That's what we say. Just like they're greedy. You're greedy. You're lust. The 7 deadly sins. Well, there's only one deadly sin: the control freak. Control addiction. What is control addiction? It's psychopathy. Because a natural person with love in their heart doesn't need to control anything. A person who knows themselves doesn't need to control anything. Life happens. Their natural expression of free will circulates with life, and life happens because we are interconnected. What they're trying to tell us is we're not interconnected. Maybe there is a God. They'll accept it. There's a God, but he's an asshole or an idiot or fucking doesn't know what he's doing. And, well, he's not going to help you. So, sure, believe in God all you want, but he's not going to help you. Maybe there is an extraterrestrial race, but they can't help you. Nobody can help you. It's all random. There is no spirit. You can call it spirit if you want. You can talk about spirituality, but in essence, when you say, well, it's all technology and it's all, you know, ETs battling or people battling or demons battling, well, that's what people do. It's like having the material world and calling it spiritual with fancy fucking forms, you know. The true spirituality is supposed to be the essence that we cannot see. It's the essence is not going to be different than the form. It's going to be the essence of the form, the truth, the nature of it. It's not going to be the artifice. They're trying to tell us that spirit is artificial. It's an artificial intelligence run by a psychopath. That's the program, you know. God works for them. That's the program, even though we can fucking dress it up as we like, but they're telling us that God works for them. And they're trying to say, no, we work for this evil one. No, in reality, their fucking construct of divinity is an artificial intelligence that has, you know, they use as part of the program. So, you know, all of this promissory note thing and removing your consent is in principle important. However, you have to face everything that keeps you scared, that keeps you wanting to keep signing the contract, or that compels you to sign the contract in your own mind. The paper is nothing. That's just their own reference frame. That's bookkeeping. The banking system is a bookkeeping system. It is not a real process. It is not the true dynamic of what's going on. The true dynamic, if you don't believe in spiritual, just call it psychological. It's psychological capitulation, you know. So they buy and sell in psychological capitulation, which is connected to commodities as another reference frame. So, you know, if you change and destroy a bookkeeping system, it's not necessarily going to change and eliminate what's behind the bookkeeping system. And thus, you know that the system here, the matrix, is now telling us it's all about bankers. Of course, blame the accountant. They may be behind whatever, but they're still accountants. They're still bookkeepers. They're the little guy in the back room with the funny hat and the, you know, the sleeve protector things that keeps notes. Even though they wear fancy suits and walk around, they've become celebrities now. But look, there's only one corporation on the planet, you know, and that corporation claims to own us. So you go into the feeling of being owned. What is that? And you go into the feeling of being threatened. You go into the belief that you're going to be killed if they threaten you. But of course, if they take notice of you, yes, they will. They will harass you. They will do this to you. They will do that to you. But if you can do it in a way that they will not notice you, that's how you start. You start, you get stronger, and you notice that you have more leeway in expressing because they won't notice you. Why not? Because there won't be any external effects that they can see. You see, so far we define a reality in common effects that they can see and that we can see. Unless they can see it, it's not real. Unless the institutions tell us that it's proven, it's not real. It's not objective. They have defined objectivity for us. But if we can perceive effects that they cannot see, they're going to try to tell us we're insane if they get wind of it, if we go and scream it to the public. But if we can do things in the privacy of our own beings first and notice changes, then we can organize a strategy of communication where they won't be able to perceive that we are actually engaging in change, but we can affect other people. We can even talk about these topics. We can even be very open. I believe that that's the only part of Neil Dyer's spiel that I agree with, that yes, if you know how to engage within yourself, then you can actually find ways of expression that are not going to trigger the establishment against you. And I mean expression, patterns, whatever, because it won't fit in their equations. And I'm not giving you specific techniques because there are none, first of all. Specific, you know, one size fits all. There is a general guideline, and it's very common. The solution's right under our noses. The funny thing is that it took me years of research to realize that yoga, for example, has been completely misrepresented. And it's not academic research. It's, history plus practice. And of course, history is written by the victors. So if you go and look at the deeper zones and connect the dots, you're going to be stepping on toes if you express it. And I don't mean the system. I mean traditions. I mean people from certain countries where yoga originated or whatever, that are going to say you're insulting my traditions, you're insulting my culture. It's like, no, I'm simply looking at where now in the present we can move forward, because in India there is this thing, okay? They talk about the ages, the yugas, right? Golden age, the silver age, etc. Now, one thing that people don't talk about in spiritual circles, aside from specialists and Indians themselves, as far as I know, but amongst the people who talk, oh, the Kali Yuga, the Golden Age, the this, the that, well, why don't you talk about this? The primary reference to these ages is what spiritual practices fit every age. Within the tradition, they explain that, well, in the Golden Age, you had to do these spiritual practices. This was the way people expressed. In the Silver Age, they expressed like this. In the Dark Age, they express differently, because you don't have the luxuries that you had in the other ages. You're much more contracted. You're much more, the veil of ignorance is stronger. You can't, your stamina is weaker. You can't afford to go through elaborate ceremonies or this or that, or artistic plays, or partying type zones or whatever. You can't afford to do what used to work in the past. Again, this is a very long drawn out, because if you look at it even deeply, well, this is also an allegory for our historic process here. Our own, what works spiritually, what works esoterically in each time period, not just in the big scheme, but in the last 2,000 years, in the last 5,000 years. This is why you've had sages come out every so often, and these sages have created world religions. The sage generates a vibration that couples with collective need, and that is harvested and turned by the system into a world religion. Let's put it that way. It was meant to be a wave of collective change inspired by a group of people that happen to be represented maybe by one person. Represented means that that one person, you can identify the wave of change through them easier. It doesn't mean that they're the only ones who are there. It's like at the time of Jesus, there were many Jesuses. There were many people like that, But in terms of the historic process, we recognize the wave of change Jesus represented through Jesus, the most, Christ consciousness. Buddha existed 500 years before. A different wave of change was necessary. It didn't just affect, the East. Buddhism went all the way to the Roman Empire. It went to Hellenistic Greece. It went to Alexander's time, when actually Buddhist monks made it to Europe. But there were also, Europeans who made it to the Far East. So by then, there was an interchange, and many principles went into Egypt. They affected the esoteric processes and everything. Before that, there was another one. And you don't say ages. It's not like, well, every 500 years or every so often. No, it's more nonlinear than that. The point is that usually collective changes are represented by one person historically accredited by the system. But it doesn't mean that that one person was the cause. That one person wasn't there to change the world. He was there to provide resources in order to engage in the strengthening of the collective to overcome the matrix under those specific conditions. So in our time, there are different conditions. You cannot go to old traditions and say, okay, this is how we meditate and it's going to work now. No, there are different conditions now. You have to, but you don't need to throw them out either. You have a foundation and you say, okay, I want to bake a cake. And when I was a little kid, I liked chocolate cake, but now I can't eat chocolate. I need, strawberry shortcake or something. You still use the same basic ingredients, but you add different ways, you cook it differently, you do all kinds of things differently. The nuances, the details, but the details are sometimes very, very important. So that's what I want to share. Because in the old days, you could just go into meditation and go off into nirvana because people had no clue what nirvana was. They had no clue what the nature of consciousness was. Before that, in the very far past, during the agricultural revolution, what sages used to teach was how to plant crops, how to do basic healing, herbalism, things like that. People were getting out of the law of the jungle and the Ice Age, during the Ice Age or whatever, they were learning to collect in groups where they could domesticate animals and all of that. They didn't know how to live in harmony. They kept attacking each other. You know, crops would fail in one community, so they'd go attack the other community. So humanity was ready to fall apart. You know, there were many times when humanity was ready to fall apart. So then men and women arose who were resourceful enough to smooth things out, to give solutions, to give options. But they couldn't solve the deeper issues because, you know, first you got to deal with what you got. In our day, things are different. We've already done all of these things, but we haven't put them together. We haven't put together the pragmatic with the esoteric. We don't even know ourselves, although we have ways to know ourselves. Christ consciousness, you know, it comes out in some people, doesn't it? But it's not proliferate because it needs the support of all these other factors. This is the age of synthesis between 9 and 10. 9 is the number of synthesis, not completion. Synthesis means connecting the dots. 8 means it's all there, but you haven't connected the dots. Christ consciousness, it's all there. You feel it. It's the consciousness. It's the state. It's everything, but it doesn't change the world. And so it's sacrificed. So we can use Christ as a commodity. We put it on the cross. Christ signs a promissory note, and then he's fucking, you know, enriches the Pope and enriches the this and enriches the that. But it wasn't meant to be a sacrifice. It was meant to be an investment. Because when you invest, it comes back to you. That's what karma is meant to be. Karma is not punishment. Karma is meant to be you're investing in your own reality. Your actions create reactions, right? So that is your investment. Every time you act, you express a truth, you express yourself the way it's supposed to be, and that seeds the next moment somehow. But, you know, I'm not talking about creating reality. I'm talking about initiating a causality for effects, because so they're trying to control the causality. That's where money comes in. Those who control causality. I mean, what's the definition of a God, small g? Somebody who controls causality, controls creation, you know, manipulates puppets, everything. That's what they see it. So that's why they call themselves gods. They're all drunk on it. We can make them do whatever we want. Look at them. They're all dancing to our tune. You know, doesn't matter how they do it. So they get overconfident in this. And then amongst themselves, they start seeing symptoms that, look, this is only temporary. We have to initiate the program. We have to debug it. We have to rewrite it. We have to do something else. But things are chaotic now because this is the time of synthesis. Synthesis means that the system or reality is not going to obey because things are coming together closer, becoming more contracted, more condensed in order to be eventually put together. They are trying to convince us that they're doing the putting together. This is not true. They are not in control. They are scaring us. This is the program. How do you break the program? There are many ways to do it. Now, I'm just going to give one general mapping, and I'm going to address in this rather long, talk that, again, skims through many things. And you can see that this is so deep, one person cannot just sit there and explain it clearly, and so everybody can take notes and go do it, and it's done. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. If there is somebody out there who can do it, maybe eventually they'll come up. But this stage is something that enough people, I believe, can benefit from so they can start seeing the signs and portents in their own life that nobody else has to validate. That way you can slip through the cracks in the system, and then by slipping through the cracks, you get to the underside of the system, and there is the real work done. So if you see changes in the world, you may not even be able to connect those changes to your own process. But that doesn't mean you are not causal, you are not influencing. You have no clue how many people and I'm speaking generally to everybody, all of you who are disheartened by not changing your minds and making people believe you and all of this about, the ways of the world, you have no clue how many people you are influencing. Because it's not a matter of changing one person. That's how we see it. Oh, there's a person, they've changed. Let's mark another check mark on the scoreboard. Well, you might have changed their mind 15%. You may have changed their mind 50% or 80%. They won't show it to you unless it's 100%. But you may have made them think in a way that's going to lead to more experiences. The system is going to try to turn them back. They may see that, and it may work in their favor. There are more changes going on, and you can see it in the world. But these changes are not visible unless some time has passed, and not under a system that is investing in keeping us in the dark. In fact, not only in the dark, but it projects movies so we see things differently. So briefly, the whole thing about meditation before, that it's mindlessness, I have to say that it does piss me off a little bit, because that's like saying, Christians just drink blood and eat the corpse. The body and the blood of Christ, they used to say Christians were cannibals. That's what the Romans used to say. And I'm sure that the Christians who heard it would either laugh or get pissed off. It's a misrepresentation. In the same way, meditation is it's the opposite of mindlessness. But mindfulness is something else. The point is that the first thing, if you're going to engage in harnessing your potential, is you need to stand on principles. This is where we're in agreement with Ron. We made videos about that before, that you need a hierarchy of principles, and not only just to say one is better than the other, but you need a basic principles, like being truthful to yourself first and foremost, living in integrity, not resorting to stealing from others or harvesting yourself, just like the others do. You don't need to harvest, because if you need to harvest, then you're not going to look at your own resources and what you already have, what you can cultivate. Non-violence, that doesn't mean lying down and being killed. It means wanting to destroy. Curses are violent acts, they're psychic violent acts. But if somebody is against you and you face the demon in yourself, they will have no access. Of course, facing the demon in yourself is something that is the most difficult thing in the world. And doing it right is even more difficult. So you can't just say, do it, face your fear, whatever, because it's far more difficult than that. Facing true fear all at once would kill us. It's that bad. It's too much energy going through too small a channel. You need to prepare yourself. But the point is that there are principles. Creativity is another principle. Honoring creative thought, honoring creative feeling. Solidarity, you all know what principles are. There's no need to basically, and it's not moralizing. But there's a second stage, and this second stage is basic attitudes. And one of these attitudes is be aware of hygiene. Physical hygiene, psychic hygiene. Know when somebody is crapping on you. Know when you're in a crapping atmosphere. You can't open up the crap in the name of love, loving your neighbor when they want to vent and crap on you. You need to be able to get back, and then you may need to rest. You may need to meditate in the sense of creating peace. You may need to heal. You may need to restructure and reconstitute. Recognize that. This isn't just taking a vacation away from things. This is honoring your health 24/7. It's very, very important to do that, because you won't have the stamina to make any change if you don't. And all of it amounts to cleanliness, not sterilizing, but basically knowing with whom you associate, with what you associate, what is influencing you, what you're allergic to physically, emotionally, mentally. And it's not denial either. You know who you are in that sense. The second thing is being able to live in the moment, being able to be content as you, separate from anything else. Just not hating yourself, not saying it's hopeless, we're worthless, I'm weak, I'm this. Releasing judgments on yourself. Forget about the others. Release the judgments on yourself. This leads to a point of not feeling guilty for being contented. You're not an escapist. These are the contentions, these are the zones that New Agers have taken to an extreme. They have abused them. You can even abuse integrity. You can abuse truth, by using it under false pretenses. The point is that if you're going to be empowered, these two basic things are important. Hygiene across the board, health, in other words, and being able to stand in the present moment, without stress screwing you up, without creating more nightmares than we already have, being able to have a fundamental sense of well-being that needs no cause. It doesn't need it. You don't have to suffer because other people are suffering. You're already suffering enough. In fact, you do justice and help other people more when you actually have that foundation of well-being and operate from there, because it connects you. That makes you even more compassionate. You know, it doesn't have to be destroyed. Beyond that, what matters is passion. Passion is important. Passion to do this. Passion to overcome. Passion for this, whatever your cause is. But the thing is, if your cause is limited and false, your passion burns you out. If you feel burned out, then your cause is very likely infiltrated by program. Your hygiene isn't working. Your, inner well-being has been compromised. Look back to the other things. Passion, spiritual passion may mean getting into a purpose of focusing on yourself in order to detect everything and anything. Whatever your purpose is, whatever your cause is, the bigger the picture, the deeper the cause, the bigger the challenge, the more you will eventually be empowered. Notice how the system is trying to turn us away from our own sense of what righteousness, so to speak, even though that word has been abused by fundamentalists. Notice how the system gives us causes. Go for this cause, go for that cause, do this, sign up for the other. It's always sidetracking us, and we're not making our own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
If you're engaging in spirituality, so-called meditation, and you're not driven by an inner fire, a passion, a motivation that is the motivation of the Olympic athlete running ahead of everybody else, it doesn't have to be competition. It's you doing the best and being motivated against all odds to keep going because you are a fire. And that fire is never quenched. That's what they want to do. Beyond that comes mindfulness. And Ron has described mindfulness. That's it. You get to know yourself through mindfulness. You get to know your thoughts and all of that. Nothing more needs to be said. And the final of these 5 prerequisites for meditative process to be able to begin to meditate is surrendering to your inner kingdom. The kingdom of God is within you. The king is somewhere in there. It's not an external authority. It's not even somebody who's your parent or created you. It is an extension of yourself, and you are an extension of it. The point is, open up and receive before you judge, because you cannot judge before you know, and you cannot know before you identify. And so receive, and reception is a process. It is not, I receive, okay, where are you? Well, there may be blocks to reception and all of these things. So, and these things alone can lead to enlightenment because it will activate an inner intuition that will lead to a process that may lead to a stance that we call enlightenment. And enlightenment isn't just, oh, there it is. Enlightenment is empowerment. You're plugging in to the cosmos. So you are going to be empowered, resourceful, and that is a progression, because every step of the way is geared to give you the resources to reclaim the next step. It doesn't take you to the top. But it's not about patience. It's about the fact that the other side could have killed us and done its agenda already, and it hasn't. It keeps making excuses. I don't care what you're saying, that's what I perceive. I've been perceiving this for years. I'm like, this is interesting. I went through the fear of, oh no, now they're going to pull the plug. And maybe if I say, and the fear that says, well, if I just, right when I don't expect it, that's when they're going to screw me. All of these things. But still, it's like, well, my inner passion is not going to be dampened because I'm noticing weakness. Now they're fighting amongst themselves. Something is going on that is not what they say it is. So that means something is being done. There is something going on that's not part of their program. They're just trying to capitulate it, consolidate it to their program. So the point is that we cannot even speak of meditation until we've engaged in these kinds of things, these 5 principles. And they're not, it's just one organization of it. But meditation is self-awareness. That's what meditation is. It is sustained self-awareness, being the center And engaging in the world or not engaging, it doesn't matter. That's your option. But self-awareness, sentient awareness, felt awareness, conscious awareness, all of it combined into one essence and operating from there. That's meditation. And it leads to something else. That's all I'm going to say today. This has been a rather long talk, but there's been a lot to be said. My attempts here are to connect the internalization potentials, or my view of them, with practical things, with being able to engage in things that matter, like the economy and how to deal with the world and all of the stuff that's being, the toxicity and all our fears, basically. The world that we're engaging in represents our fears, So unless it's a joyful world, then it's not. And it's not fun to be engaging with your fear. But I want to provide an opportunity, at least in terms of information, to be able to know, to encourage people that we are potentially resourceful. We are in the image and likeness of God, but that doesn't mean we're actualizing that image and likeness. So, however, I believe and know and have seen progress in myself that we can engage that way. It is now 9 o'clock, right on the hour. So maybe we haven't started at an important time, but we're ending on it. And that's what matters. 900, which means that we have completed, we're at the stage of completing synthesis. And synthesis means when all the ducks in a row, then completion can actually consolidate change. That's what I wanted to say today, Ron. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Aristo. Stay there.